Julia Ross. And I want to key off Mr. Vargas' question because he brought up social issues in an economic environment. And I want to posit this proposition to you, that it is logically inconsistent to claim to be socially liberal but economically conservative. Please address this in terms of, I'll just lay them out. Abortions killed 50 million U.S. citizens. If you multiply that by minimum wage, that's lost production, that's lost earning. Sexual immorality of any stripe, and I'm not picking on anyone, is engaging in high risky behavior. That drives up healthcare costs. Families that fall apart because it's easier to get out of a marriage with no fault divorce than to get out of a business contract makes family and children fall apart. The budget of the state picks up the welfare subsidizing those problems. So please explain to me how you cannot be concerned with social issues when there is an economic cost to it.
Is that directed to any one candidate?
Any candidate,
Anybody,
sir.
Anyone like to address that first?
I will. Hi, I'm Gerarda Cullifer, and I'm running for State Senate. And I want to thank Sylvia for that question. Thank you for that question. I want to be very clear to all the voters. I am a Republican, and I'm a proud Republican. And it's in part because of our fiscal conservatism, our support of businesses, our common sense ideas for our real life, everyday challenges. But we also, and I as a conservative Republican, represent a diverse voice. And what that voice is on social issues is basic bedrock conservatism. I am pro-life, and I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Anyone else? Patricia?
Hi, Patricia Phillips for State Senate in the 33rd District. I think the thing is that our role in government and public policy is to advance policies that are good for society, kind of that concept of the social welfare. And we do know from extensive research on the role of the family in terms of children. Children who are raised in a two-parent family do better. They live in less poverty. They do better academically. They are healthier. They are less likely to be involved in juvenile delinquency, less likely to get involved in gangs, less likely to engage in dangerous activity of drugs and the like. So there is a role for government to promote and advance that social structure that is best for society. And I think that makes, it's an economic sense as well. Thank you.
Okay. Next question. Next question.
Dave Cordingley, and I asked this question as an individual, not as a representative of Dulles Regional Chamber. I'll direct it to the incumbents, but anybody can answer it. And that is, in the recent General Assemblies, there has been, as represented here or discussed here, a lot of bipartisan cooperation for things. But absent, that is specifically absent as it relates to funding for transportation moving forward. The Senate consistently seems to support, the Democratic-controlled Senate consistently supports a gas tax or something along those lines, whereas the Republican-supported House basically won't support that. And thus we have a situation, as again described here, that transportation moving forward has a chance of being unfunded or certainly it is underfunded now and will be underfunded and maybe unfunded in the near future. How do you resolve that? And again, I'll open it up to anybody, but I want two of the, at least someone from the Senate and from someone from the House, that means you, Jim, to answer.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And I do support long-term sustained funding for our transportation network. It's critical for the long-term continued growth and prosperity of our region and the state. I supported the governor's $4 billion transportation package this past session, and he has said consistently that that is just a first step. He ran on a message of having solutions to solve our transportation problems without raising taxes. He said that this is the first step, and I think it's important that we take a look at what else he has coming forward, and if we can make those work, we should try and do that. We'll have to see whether that's sufficient, And I think it's also, and it's going to take sustained leadership at that level, from the governor, from the Speaker of the House, from the Majority Leader. And as individual legislators, I think it's important that we remain flexible about how we do that, because when we each come up with our own ideas and say it must be this way, it's that much harder to reach a compromise.
Delegate.
Sure, thanks for the question. I think before we talk about additional taxes on Northern Virginians for transportation, we need to make sure we're getting the money back from Richmond that we deserve, which was to my point earlier about using and exercising the additional clout that we're going to have as a delegation in Richmond in 2012. Second point on that is it's difficult. The money that we get back from Richmond and the more that we should get back needs to be focused on projects that will give us the biggest bang for the buck for transportation. One of the reasons why it's difficult for constituents to say, you know, I'm going to back a tax increase is they simply don't believe that the money's going to solve a problem. And the way we structure that too often in Northern Virginia is every little jurisdiction gets a little bit, and we end up solving little transportation problems. They're all for the good, but we're making spot improvements and minor changes, not changing and making regional kinds of improvements to our transportation system. Until we're sure that the money is going to be spent that way, I don't think there's going to be a lot of political support in Northern Virginia to make a change.
You want to make a comment?
You know, if I might, I think given the economic times we have right now, we need to emphasize the fact here in Virginia that congestion relief must be prioritized, because it's not just our commute times and what have you. This is moving goods and services. This is creating jobs. This is our economic development. For the Commonwealth of Virginia to ignore that would be very foolish. And of course, congestion here in Northern Virginia is the very worst in the Commonwealth. But just for for the audience and for folks who are listening to this at home, we need to understand how we got here. Our primary funding mechanism in Virginia is a 17.5-cent gas tax passed in 1986 by Governor Belials, and it was a per gallon gas tax. Believe it or not, 26 years later, we are using fewer gallons. And the buying power of that, according to Bob Chase at the transportation allowance, the buying power of the 17.5 cents, which went a long way in 1986, is down to 7 cents. So, efficiency is only going to get us so far. We're going to have to find that we can't just redivide the pie or redistribute it. We've got to find a mechanism for expanding the pie, and that's why we have to make sure that Governor McDonnell follows through with what he told us he would do if we passed his bond package, and come up with a plan that we can delve into and get this thing done in this General Assembly session.
Thank you. Mr. Flannery.
Just to follow up, the thing that I have a hard time understanding as a business person is why folks go down to Richmond and support things that don't return a positive and that don't provide a positive return on the investment. Dave Marsden's voted for a gas tax increase just about every year that he's been in the General Assembly, but he himself even talks about how we use less gasoline today. It's not a solid return on the investment. It's just like Fairfax County being asked to increase their taxes to send it to other parts of the state. It just doesn't make good sense for those businesses and families here in Northern Virginia. We've got to make sure that we have legislators going down to Richmond looking out for their districts first and their constituents first and everyone else second. And Fairfax County can no longer go down to Richmond and allow the rest of the state to continue to pass bills that take more money from us and ask us to just deal with it and not invest in our infrastructure, not invest in the maintenance components that we need. In the future, as our economy continues to grow, I think we've got a great opportunity to use those future revenues to invest in transportation and to take a percentage of those and dedicate them so that we have them in the foreseeable future.
Thank you. Ms. Cullifer.
Gerarda Cullifer for Virginia Senate. It is a false choice presented by tax and spend liberals here in Northern Virginia that the only way to raise revenue is to increase your taxes. Bob McDonnell, our governor, has strived to and successfully brought jobs to Virginia. As we increase the number of taxpayers, we do increase revenue. Be very shrewd and ask how they want to raise revenue before lowering unemployment and thus raising revenue. So I suggest to you, do not raise my taxes. Let's get unemployment down and raise revenue. Thank you.
Patricia Phillips for State Senate. I would just like to add a couple things that haven't been brought up, is that that I am very supportive of general fund money being used for transportation funding. Our roads and infrastructure benefit everyone in Virginia, not just the people who drive the most or use the roads the most. Secondly, if we can adjust our budget by 3 percentage points, we can provide the funding that we need. If we relate that to a household budget of $4,000 a month, that would be adjusting $120. I think it can be done. Tough choices to be made, but it's a doable challenge to provide that funding from our general fund.
Thank you. And since we've gotten to this format of the sort of the round robin answering the questions, I think it's very informative. I think it's very educational for our audience. So, but that does mean that we're going to have limited time for additional questions. So if you can step forward and we'll get through as many as we can.
Okay. My name is Zoe Lockwood. I have a very quick question for Senator Herring. I understand there's an initiative afoot to include right-to-work language in the state constitution. Would you support that? And if not, why not?
I support Virginia's right, excuse me, I support Virginia's right to work laws. We need to keep our business-friendly regulatory environment, and so I'm not aware of the initiative to put it in the Constitution, but again, I support the right to work laws and don't think we should not undermine them.
Thank you. Next question. Please identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Audrey. My name is Audrey, and I have a question because I have here a report from the Family Foundation Action, and I noticed that both you and Senator Marsden, and this is directed to Senator Herring, have a rating of 8 from the foundation out of a possible 100. And I would like for you to comment on that because it is important. It reflects how you would represent families and the issues that are of concern to families.
Are you aware of that? Are you aware of it? Would you like to respond at all?
I'm not sure of the exact reference here, but I've been involved with families for over 40 years trying to solve problems that young people have had. I started off as a probation officer for 10 years, then ran a group home, our first shelter home here in Fairfax for kids with severe home difficulties and substance abuse and school problems. So I'm very, very familiar with the pressures that families are under to deal with young people. We're going through a revolution right now with technology where kids are getting involved with, on their cell phones, getting involved in bullying and sexting and problems that we never imagined existing before. They're being victimized by predators online. It's a whole new frontier of law enforcement and social problems that we've never had to deal with before. And I think we're dealing with them successfully here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, both from a law enforcement aspect in that regards. But here's the interesting thing. Crime is down. We're at an all-time low, at least in my lifetime here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. When I came down to the Department of Juvenile Justice, we had 1,450 kids incarcerated. Today there are 800. A lot of the work that was done to do that I was able to help with. We had a 121-bed juvenile detention home in Fairfax. It's now down to 40 kids. We're making a lot of progress to help families.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, please. And did you want to also add? Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Next
I
question.
would love to hear what he has to say.
Okay.
I'm very supportive of families. I have worked hard ever since I've been elected to support individuals and families. As I go, I mean, I've been married for 22 years. I have 2 children. As I go across the district, knocking on doors, talking to families, I hear over and over their concerns, and they talk about what can we do to keep Northern Virginia's economy strong? What can we do to help get people back to work? What can we do to keep our educational opportunities for our children strong and have a bright future? I've continued to work on those issues, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Thank you.
I suspect that the rating probably has to do with the representation
Ma'am.
of how you vote and the values.
Thank you.
But I had one other question on
I
the
think
eminent domain
we have a
issue.
lot of people waiting, so we'll get to the next question. Thank you. Sir.
Hi, how are you? This question is directed to Mr. Marsden, Senator Marsden, and whoever wants to respond afterwards. Reducing regulations, Reducing regulation reduces cost of goods and services. This reduction of costs make goods and services more affordable for all Virginians and especially low-income families. My question is, there was a bill passed in the House that provides that all goods produced or manufactured within the Commonwealth, when such goods are held, retained, or maintained in the Commonwealth, shall not be subject to federal law. My question is, because this has been referred to the Senate, would you help eliminate federal law regulations from Virginia-made interstate use goods? Yes or no?
Well, I think we have to be very careful in this area. We need we do have a Commerce Clause in our Constitution. We need to treat all states equally here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I don't believe that it's a good idea to start pulling our union apart in terms of being able to decide which federal laws we're going to abide by and those that we're not. So it's a complicated issue. I think we need to keep a dialogue with our federal representatives to make sure that the federal laws passed that are passed up there are consistent with what our needs and our values are here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Anyone else like to respond? Okay. All right, next question.
Good morning. My name is Drazen Alcocer. I'm the chairman of the Veteran Military Support Committee with the Dulles Chamber. My question is open-ended to anyone that wants to answer, and it's basically, what are you guys doing to help out the returning veterans in our military workforce right now?
I think the business community has an incredibly great role to play in this process, and I think the state does as well. We've got a lot of friends and family, I know I do, that have served within the last 10 years. They're returning from active duty in either Iraq and Afghanistan. That continued workforce development that we discussed earlier is so incredibly important. As members of the military decide to enter the workforce as a civilian, we've got to make sure that they have the tools and the equipment necessary to be trained and participate here in Northern Virginia and in the state of Virginia as well. We're one of the largest states of veterans, I think, in the entire country, and we need to continue to make sure that the state has a proactive role to play to help them reintegrate back into civilian life, for sure.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Great question. I think Jason is right on target on that. I think additionally, as I've talked to veterans and they come back here and are very concerned about the direction of our country nationally in terms of changing from our free market system and a top-heavy government-controlled economy. And I'm very concerned, and one of my motivations is to keep those features of our country, our free market system, our representative government, to keep it working and vibrant so that the country, the liberties that they fought for, are retained in our government.
Hi, I'm Gerarda Cullifer, and I ask for your vote for the Virginia Senate. I'm an Air Force wife, and one of the things we can do as a Senate delegation is keep taxes low so that we keep, retain, and incentivize and entice more government contractors. Because your question is a good one, and many of our veterans, returning veterans, will end up working for our defense contracting community. So that's what we can do here in Virginia to keep those wonderful veterans employed when they return home to us safe. Thank you for the question.
Senator.
And just very quickly, I was very proud to support, as were a number of us in the legislature, the Wounded Warrior Program here in Virginia that funded services for individuals coming back who, in the service of their country, suffered grievous wounds and emotional trauma. And we've made some progress in that area and was very proud to support that.
Senator.
Well, first, thank you very much for your service. And I think it's important that Virginia continue to support our military families. I'm proud to be the co-chair of the National Guard Caucus in the General Assembly because of my strong support for the National Guard. And I sponsored legislation to make, it's called the Military Parents Equal Protection Act, to make it better for families who are deployed overseas, because it is tough on all the families, and make it easier for them when they return, and also continue to support the Wounded Warrior Program.
Delegate, did you want to comment?
Thank you. I won't repeat a number of the comments that have been made, but just to share a couple of additional things. For those who might not be aware, the state's website has a listing and a lot of description on the state benefits for veterans, and I would encourage any veteran who has a question in that regard to look at that and maybe find some things that they perhaps didn't know about. One initiative for next year And this is not as significant as, say, the property tax relief that we voted on as a constitutional change for disabled veterans, which I certainly supported, is simply a designation on a driver's license that the holder of that driver's license is a veteran, for the purpose of making it easier to get the kind of discounts and things that various vendors of goods and services offer veterans, as opposed to having some other way to prove that their veteran identity. I'd welcome feedback, frankly, from the veterans community on whether that makes sense, but that's a bill that's on the drawing board for me for 2012.
Thank you. And as a veteran, I appreciate the question. I appreciate all your support for veterans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll make the next question the last question. And is it okay, Dave, if we let someone else ask a question?
Jerry Odell. Coming back to that question about this report card on the General Assembly for 2010 and 11, put out by the Family Foundation, or specifically the arm of the Family Foundation that does these things, Family Foundation Action. I'm curious to know why Jim Lemunyan dodged the question where he had an opportunity to talk about social issues by saying that the economic are the 95% dominant issues that come up when he goes door to door. This scorecard shows you with an excellent number, 95. You should be proud of that. And the two Democrats, Mr. Marsden and Mr. Herring, Mark Herring and Dave Marsden, deceived us when they said in the remarks just now, that they are helping families. This report, I'd like you to explain why you got that 8%, and I'd like to tell everybody what some of the things you voted the wrong way on are.
Sir, I'm sorry. We're trying to limit the questions to 30 seconds. So I think they've gotten the thrust of the question.
But the people don't know how they voted against the family.
And I appreciate the question. We've limited the questions to 30 seconds. We'll give them an opportunity to respond if they would like to respond. Would you like to?
In the short time that I have to answer the question, I'm not going to go through everything that might have been in the rating. I'm proud of my voting record. I'm proud of that score. My earlier comment wasn't to dodge any issues. To just further that point, was the first person to put my entire voting record online, and I'm happy to have people examine that and ask me questions on any issue, whether they're social issues or anything else, and would certainly welcome any particular questions you might have after the session's completed.
I'm very proud of my record, and I stand up for women's rights.
I think there's legitimate differences in terms of how we feel we can best support families in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I've been doing it for many, many years. And I think we have made tremendous strides here in Virginia. The biggest thing we can do is get this economy fixed, get people back to work. The stress that it puts on families is just extraordinary. That is one of the reasons we need to get Virginia back to work. We've made some progress. We're doing better than other states, but there's a lot of room for improvement.
Great. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please, round of applause for these men and women who are willing to serve. Thank you all for participating. Thank you at home for watching this forum. And thank you to Cox Communications for hosting us.